And I'm going to remember, oh, Angela remembered to start the recording. We are pros. We are pros, Angela. So welcome everybody, and welcome to Kevin and Francesca. I started doing these interviews just as a sort of idea that came up with COVID. And I'm just coming back after a break, and I was super nervous today. I was like, oh my God. But the whole point really was that I wanted to be able to have these kind of just very light, informal conversations, you know, about being filmmakers and what it's like to have a life as a filmmaker, because I think that a lot of times filmmakers who want to be filmmakers think that it's something that it's not. So, you know, and then I had this idea to talk to couples who work together in production. So you're my first couple and my first people back after the break. And I haven't really said publicly that I'm now in Montana, which is totally bizarre, but here I am. And are you in Miami Beach right now at home?
We are. This is our hometown. Yeah,
okay, hold on one second.
You know, I should actually ask her if she could wait. We're in Miami. We moved here from LA about 3.5 years ago. After we made a movie in Florida, we were close to family, which is where we're both from Florida. Francesca from Miami, and our son has 7 first cousins here. So
oh, wow.
So we decided it was a good time to make that move.
Yeah, great. And I love Miami. And the reason I'm in Montana is because I was on my way to Miami, and then COVID spiked and I decided to just hang out somewhere else for a little while until things.
Yeah, we did the same thing this summer. We were visiting family in Colorado and ended up staying there for some time when everything kind of went south here. Certainly interesting times.
Yes, interesting times. And because you have a very young son, how old is he?
He's 11.
11.
He's here. He was that
we
little.
Peeked in over our shoulder for a second.
Exactly.
He's going to come and peek in. He's very welcome to come and peek in. But you know, I keep saying that for parents, working parents with children at home, I think it's the hardest. I mean, I suppose the hardest is to be unemployed with COVID, and then next is to be a working parent, I think. So how are you finding that experience?
Have to make adjustments, I think, you know, teamwork. But he's doing pretty well. I mean, school, he's pretty busy from about 8:20 till 3, you know, with occasional interruptions. So
in a way, actually having him go back to online school has allowed us to create a different rhythm and to, you know, work in a different way, which was, you know, when we were off during the summer, it was more challenging. But he's, you know, I have to say, he started a new school, and he's really there. It's amazing that this generation, the way they navigate technology and the Zooms and the Google Meets, and it's just incredible. So
wow.
You make the most of everything that happens, and in a way, there's some silver linings to all this.
Right.
You know.
I get to listen in.
Right.
And
we get to get a much better idea of what school is like right now for him.
Right. Exactly.
You're going to get a refresher on everything that he's learning.
Yeah. How to do algebra again.
Yeah. I was going to mention algebra, and then I thought I better not. Because So I always like to start with a question, and I'm going to ask you both this separately, but which is basically, when did you first know or decide that you wanted to be filmmakers? But I'm asking you separately. So maybe Francesca first.
Francesca much earlier than me.
Yeah, I think I was born in Rome, and my dad lived in Rome my whole life, and my parents divorced when I was young. My mom remarried, and so my life was always back and forth. And my dad had this really amazing job. He was a doctor, but he was kind of the American doctor in Rome, and he was the physician for all of these insurance companies that insured all of these film productions, like that would come through Rome and through Italy. So as a kid, he would take me with him to sets, and I just fell in love with the circus of it and thought it was the most exciting, magical place in the world. And so I knew very early on that I wanted to go into film and be a part of that circus. And then went to USC and went to film school. And then from there started working on, small productions with friends and classmates. But I got the bug very early, I think, as a kid, like just going and seeing a set and seeing this magical world that existed. So that really is the first, what drove me there.
Did you get to be on any sets of movies that we would know about?
Well, I'm trying to think. I remember I got to be an extra in a Bertolucci film, and I'm trying to remember what it was called. And it was so exciting because I got to go to the costume department and wear like I think it was like I had to dance the tarantella in a square from the 1930s and big dress and it was incredible. My dad at that time he was a first generation American who was in World War II, and then after the war went back to Italy and actually got his medical degree there and stayed. And so he was there in the 50s and the 60s. And so I grew up with, Antonioni lived on our block, and Fellini, and I mean, all the greats, all of them, so it was an amazing, there was just film and filmmakers around all the time. It was incredible.
Wow. I can only imagine being a little girl and getting to wear that dress and dance. It was like, this is what I'm doing.
Yes, that was it. I was in.
Wow. I met back in Miami Beach years ago, Tomas Milian.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you ever met him right before he had his career move, but he would tell me stories about being in movies in Italy in the 50s,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So Kevin, what about you? When did you get the bug?
Well, it was more gradual in a sense because my father was still a huge cinema nut, maybe next to Sean Baker, the most knowledgeable person of film that I know. And so I grew up, loving films. My uncle, my dad's brother, was actually a producer, and he was one of the first people to do stuff with claymation.
Huh.
So there was a lot of the stop motion stuff. He made actually the first stop motion feature length film back in like the 80s. So it was before it had become a thing. But so he was, the idea that it could be a profession was something that was there. And there are other people that did creative things in my life, journalists and other things. But so I was curious from a perspective of just lots of things, and I'm still this way. There's just lots of things that pull my attention. I'm somebody who does way too many things, and I still do things outside the film business just because there's lots that interest me. But I was working, I kind of first just generally went into business because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I was offered this opportunity out of college to work as a management consultant learning about technology, which in the early 90s, this was like pre-internet, really pre-email, it was like right at the time that all that stuff was coming on, and it was an interesting time to learn about it. And my brothers, I have two younger brothers that both ended up going to film school, and I was always writing. Even in college, I was writing things of different formats and wrote some screenplays, and ended up, when I was working as a consultant, doing writing a bunch of taking some classes just to kind of explore it, just for what do they call it, like continuing education. I took a class on writing, I took a class on directing, I even did an acting workshop, knowing full well I had no business being in front of the camera. But
although you've been in like every movie we've ever made.
I basically
every director every director we've ever worked with is like, Kevin,
I'm in the Florida project.
I
I
need you to do this. And it's hilarious.
If you look closely enough, you can see me in almost everything.
It's so fun.
Funny.
I mean,
I
it's
do end up getting
hilarious.
thrown.
Why is it that they're picking Kevin to be on screen though?
I was a professor in a short film for.
I've got picked a few times, but I always end up on the editing floor. So, tells you it's a good. I made a good call being behind the camera.
But so then I actually went to business school and I got an MBA. And while I was getting my business, and I thought I would go into the business of entertainment, like be like a finance guy or something.
Right.
And the summer in between years, you typically do an internship. And I did two of them. I did an internship with Comcast, which was typical business development. And then I actually interned at Miramax back in the mid 90s in its heyday. And I worked for the head of production, Paul Webster, as an intern. And it was that summer, I was like, this is kind of cool. I don't know that I want to go into business. And so I left that company. I mean, I left school and didn't take a job. Ultimately figured out a way to make a living working as a consultant part-time, and ended up working and met with a guy who'd been producing, and went to dinner with him and ended up working on a movie with him. And after it was done, he said, why don't you join me in starting this film company? I need, a partner, business. And I started this film company. I was still consulting. I basically worked as a consultant part-time for 5 years while I started my first production company. And so that
and
trend.
When you say consultant, do you mean a consultant to regular businesses? Is that what
you mean? Regular. It had nothing to do with the movies. I lived in New York. I would wake up on a Tuesday morning and fly to Columbus, Ohio, and do consulting for the government, the state of Ohio. And then I'd fly home Wednesday night. I did that 2 days a week for 4 or 5 years. And for the rest of my time, I started this production company. And so I learned the business by doing that. And frankly, it's kind of existed throughout. Like, I really enjoy the mix of it because there's a lot that we do that's producing that is similar to what I do with other organizations. And, so it's the mix is it kind of satisfies different parts of my brain, I suppose.
And how different is it then? Because how different is it being a business consultant from being a producer, would you say?
Well, ultimately producing is about leading teams. It's about leading people and making decisions.
Yes.
That's really, it's in a particular context, right? So, you have a goal.
And putting out fires.
That's, solving problems.
Yeah.
Making decisions. And since when you make 1 million decisions, some percentage of them are going to be wrong, just by the very nature
have a consequence that leads you to another decision.
To something else. And so, or, something like, we'll talk about this, like in fact, this morning, it's funny, after this call, I'm gonna have to deal with this, but like we're making a short film in LA. Crazy time to be making a film.
And in fact, we can't go there.
We won't even be there in person.
We have to produce it remotely, which is,
we won't be there in person, but, we're having an issue with SAG getting stuff done fast enough. All right. So, and we've been through that, plenty of times. So, it's just constantly something comes up and you just deal with it,
I think maybe being a business consultant is a little bit more removed. When I worked as a consultant, I was sort of there to define strategy, but being a producer, you have to solve the problem. You're not giving it to somebody else to solve.
Well, you're strategy and problem solver.
Right.
Yeah, because you have a problem, you have problems related to the work that you're doing itself, right? But you may not, it depends on the circumstance, it depends on the way in which you're working with whatever team you're working, right? So, in some cases, we do things where you do have ownership of results, and frankly, as a producer, sometimes, like if you're executive producing, sometimes it feels more like consulting.
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
true, actually.
so when you're helping, we're in a place now where we work with younger producers and often try to help shepherd them, you know. The last feature we did was kind of like that, we tend to try to find projects. Now, I mean, we have some filmmakers that we like to work with, but then we usually try to bring in junior producers now and work with them.
Because it was a lot easier to like hit the road, and when we were younger and didn't have our son and school and all of that. So now it's not just like, hey, let's pick up and go to Japan or India or New York or wherever.
Because
how did you two meet? When did that happen?
So my brother, who ended up going to film school and becoming a writer-director, we were producing for the something for the Independent Film Channel that involved these characters. This character Greg the Bunny and his sidekicks, and we developed a concept for a sitcom with those characters and ended up selling it to Foxx. And moved to LA, and that actually was kind of the end of my first production company, because we were in New York, and ultimately we left that production company and moved to New York. And the first day that I landed in New York, I got invited to a little cocktail party. Do you know Caroline Kaplan?
No.
Joanne?
No.
So she was a friend who actually had started, it was one of the two people who started IFC Films.
Oh, okay.
And anyway, she was a mutual friend. And I literally, the day that I got to LA, she invited my brother and I over to a little gathering, which happened to be at the Chateau Marmont. It's a very cliche.
Very
LA,
nice.
very cliche LA story. We met at Chateau Marmont, and then afterward, I asked Francesca out, and she made me ask her a second time before she actually came out with me.
Is that true?
Yeah, because I tried to get you to go out, but you were.
What's Francesca's version of the story then?
So this very dear mutual friend was in town and said, I'm having a few people over, and I'd been through a breakup, and I was like, I'm really not in any kind of a mood for a party. And she, no, it's super low key. So I said, well, yeah, I've been feeling kind of down. So I don't know how social and spirited I am these days. No, come. So I came, and I remember I was wearing overalls, a poncho, a side ponytail, and clogs, when all of those things were not cool at all. And
At the Chateau Marmont.
To the Chateau. Yeah, I thought I was going to her room, and it was going to be like two of our mutual friends. We're going to be there. We're going to watch TV and have a beer or something. And then it's a full-fledged party with piano player and a thing. And I was like, oh my gosh. So of course I wanted to leave immediately. And she's like, no, come in. And she's like, we can discuss the outfit tomorrow. And I remember sitting in a group and ending with Kevin. And what struck me about Kevin that I was so taken with was that I thought he was such a wonderful listener. Like, I was so taken in by how, what a great listener, and how he was listening to everyone's conversation, and he was so thoughtful in what he was saying. And I just remember, saying to her the next day, she said to me, so how did it go? And she said, well, did you find anyone interesting? And I said, well, actually, I like those Puppet Brothers, because they were doing and she said, which one? And I said, the little one, because Kevin is not short, but his brother is 6'4". So she said, well, that's funny, because, so anyway, so then Francesca. That was it. And then literally, I think we went out, and we've been together for 20 years ever since that day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you immediately know that you were going to work together, or how did that come into the relationship?
Well, it was funny. So Francesca, at the time, I was, working on the show and working independently, and Francesca was working running the branded content group at a big commercial production company.
No, they're film and television group.
Film and television, right? And
branded, yeah.
Right, film, television, branded, and they, we,
It was called Moxie Pictures. They're still in business.
yeah,
Yeah.
the company. But so there was a project that we were working on called the 24-hour plays.
Oh, yeah.
So it was, this friend of ours had created the concept. Friend of mine from New York had created the concept and was doing it off Broadway. And it's so people who don't know what it is, it's they would get in a theater off Broadway, they would get 24 actors, 6 writers, and 6 directors together with a few producers. And typically Sunday night, we'd get together, the clock would start ticking at 10 p.m. And everybody would come in and get in a round circle and introduce themselves and what they were going to be doing that night. Because usually it was like, if you were a writer, you could act. If you were an actor, you could direct. If you were a producer, you might, do something else. And so it was people kind of trying things, and it was just kind of a fun, creative experiment. And they would all introduce themselves, and then everybody would leave but the 6 writers. And each writer would pick 4 of the actors, 6 writers picking 4 actors, and they would stay up all night and write a 10-page play for those 4 actors. And then everybody else would come back in the morning and find out what they were doing. Directors would get assigned to play, and the 4 actors would find out what they were doing, and they would rehearse that day. And then at 8 o'clock, the curtains would go up and they'd perform the plays. And by 10 p.m., the entire circle had been completed in 24 hours, and 6 new plays would have been premiered and never to be seen again. And it was a really fun thing. And I had said, in addition to starting a production company, I'd started a nonprofit in New York, which was all about trying to launch interesting, be a catalyst for either benefit events or new organizations. And so we said, what if we did this like a benefit event and go get like top writers, top directors, top actors,
and plug them in
and put them into this format, because you only need them for a day, and do it at a benefit event. So I said to Francesca, hey, I've got this idea. Let's do this together.
And this was the very, very,
this was like within 2 months of us dating.
Yeah. So I was still like, okay, sure. I mean, in my mind, I thought, this is insane. It's never going to work. No, take this kind of a risk. It's never going to happen. But I was like so in love with him. I was like, okay, let's do it. And then it was a huge success.
And then what happened was, so we planned it to take place in New York at a Lower Manhattan theater for September 24th, 2001.
Oh, right.
And we planned it for 9 months. And of course, 9/11 happened. Francesca and I were actually in LA getting ready to fly back to New York for the event. And when it happened, we were like, holy crap, what are we going to do? Can we even do it? Because it was Minetta Lane Theater on 4th Street. You couldn't even get below 14th Street.
Right.
And so it was like, what are we going to do? And, ultimately we as a group decided to go forward, because we were supporting a charity that was that was focused on youth after school programs in Lower Manhattan. And so, they really needed the help. So we said, okay, let's just do it. So we flew back. We basically spent the night we couldn't even get to my apartment, because I lived 5 blocks from the World Trade Center.
Wow.
At the time, that's where my apartment was. And we never actually went back there again, but we stayed on the floor of a friend's, and ultimately, because we were one of the first events to be organized after 9/11, everybody wanted to participate.
And so it was incredible people. I mean,
we got Tony Award winning writers, Oscar winning Tony winning directors, Oscar winning writers.
I forgot this.
The actors were like, everybody wanted to do it. So
I forgot this, but I was there.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
Oh my gosh. So
I forgot.
Because the IFP event was also that weekend.
Yeah.
And we assumed it was going to be canceled because of 9/11. And I'll never forget, the 5 of us, the 5 executive directors, were on the phone, and one of them had young children. She said, well, obviously we're not going to get on a plane and come. And it came out of my mouth. I said, I'll be damned if a bunch of terrorists are going to tell me where I can go. And we ended up doing the event. And I always say how that was the night I got to be in the same room. I didn't talk to them as Martin Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola. And so it was that weekend. And I remember standing outside the theater with Jamin O'Brien and Peter Brack. I met Peter
Yeah.
Brack.
And wasn't it one of the greatest nights in theater ever? I mean, it was incredible.
It was amazing.
Well, incredible.
look, I always say this, it's, serendipity, and, it was one of those things where we were doing something that was charitable in nature for community service.
Right.
And, we were young, much younger than we are today. This was 20 years ago, obviously. But we were taking on responsibilities that we probably wouldn't have gotten to take on otherwise. Mm-hmm. And it ended up being one of the most important nights of our career.
Right. Actually, that's true.
Because the relationships that we made that evening, not just with all the talent, but also sponsors became very interested in what we were doing.
Right.
Agents, publicists, etc. And we ended up doing that show every year for 15 years.
And we eventually moved it to Broadway. I think how many years?
After the 2 years we did it at Vanilla Lane,
and then we moved to Broadway
because it just got too big. And it led us into doing all kinds of things. Like it just really had a major impact on our career. And so I say all the time, like I tell people, like, look for those kinds of opportunities, especially we're working with a lot of college students right now.
You know what we should do?
We'll have to talk about Gather Project at some point.
Sure.
Something that we're doing right now, but it led us all the way really to Gather.
Well, you know what we should do? I was just thinking about this as we're talking about it. When New York opens up again, we should do a benefit for New York and have everybody maybe from that first group come back.
That's a great
and
idea.
Do it for New York.
Think about what to do for New York.
Yes.
That is a great idea.
And have a kind of that founding group, come back like that first, not because
That's a great. Well, we'll have to.
And I bet you
they're no longer with us though.
Yes.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. That's true.
That's true.
Yeah.
Phil Hoffman, sadly.
Yeah, Phil Hoffman is the one that I'm thinking about. Going to a benefit, a 24-hour theater thing, and seeing actors like that.
Yeah. Well, so that was the first thing that we ever did as a couple, and it certainly has propelled us into lots of other interesting things,
And so after that, when you started working more on films and so on, how did it end up? One of the things that I'm interested in is, as a couple, how is it that you divide up the work? Do you just kind of do whatever comes up, or do you have certain things that you prefer to do, or how does that work?
Kind of goes in both directions, right? I mean,
and also sometimes it depends on who's directing and who has the relationship with that director. Like, for example, when we were doing a lot of the Glamour Real Moments program that we launched, where we gave women an opportunity to direct, I think I took a lead in a different way than I do on maybe, like, let's say Sean, because of Kevin's relationship with Sean. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a different, so it kind of depends on who's directing. And
like, we just made a movie, like the last feature that we made was in Portland, Oregon, a year and a half ago. We shot it
with the first time female director.
And we actually took turns because we weren't going to move there. Usually in the past, when we would do something, we'd both be there. We'd both be on set. We'd be in different places often. Like when we did Florida Project, usually, like, I've known Sean since he was a teenager. So usually, like, I was on set, dealing with stuff, but Francesca was dealing with, like, the off-camera stuff, right? Like in the office, or dealing with any crew issues and things. So it's different. But for this movie that we did in Portland, we took turns. So, like, I was out there for the last week of prep and the first day or two of shooting, and left, and then Francesca went out a couple days. I came back and she came out a couple days after, and then it was there. I said to the crew when I was leaving, they're like, "Oh, we're sad you're leaving." I said, "Oh, you won't be sad in a couple of days. Francesca will be here." And
I brought, of course, I brought the fun.
Francesca brings the fun.
That's true.
You brought the tarantelle. So does that mean then when you're working on a film, both of you know everything about the films? What it sounds like you're saying. You both know everything.
Well, honestly, I think a lot of that also is because we're partners in real life and partners in you know, on camera and off, in a sense that, so we live and breathe it. Unfortunately, you know, that's something that we struggle with in our relationship, where it's like, okay, can we not like, can we not be constantly following up with each other or constantly be talking about work? So I think that the nature, because we are, you know, we never are away from it. We're in step with every single thing. Like if I'm on a call and he's not, but he's sitting next to me, he knows everything that's going on, and vice versa. Or so yeah, I mean,
it's certainly an interesting time too. I mean, look, life goes in stages, right? So, you know, the most important role for both of us right now is as parent, you know, and it's going to be like that for a couple of years. So it's, you know, it's definitely, you know, something that we work to figure out, and, but always with that in mind. That's, you know, and so we're making some choices also in terms of the way that we're working, and,
I want to leave maybe 10 minutes or so at the end for questions. And I also want to hear about your new project, the Gather Project.
oh, yeah.
And I want to ask you, what is, just to tell us some highlights of one of your favorite films that you've worked
that we've worked on together.
Yeah.
There's so,
I mean,
so
there's
many.
so many, my gosh. I mean, I would say, I mean, there's something very exciting about the Florida project, working there and living there, and working with the kids and Willem, and then of course Bria, who Sean found on Instagram. And
wow,
you know, it was so exciting because you're living this amazing experience with this obviously very young cast, and a lot of them were acting for the first time, and Bria of course had never acted before, and Sean is just, you know, he's just so incredible. So I mean, I think that
there's, you know, often there's moments like that I think of, and I'll just say two. One is the Florida project, where, I mean, and literally we could fill up hours telling stories. But when we did the Florida project, you know, we knew the movie was going to be special even before we shot, seeing how great the kids were. But the moment in the movie where Brooklyn at the very, very end is saying goodbye to her best friend, and she's in tears, you know, that was one take. I get chills even thinking about it. We were behind the camera watching her do this, and it was just phenomenal. And I remember, like, we all were in tears watching her, and Sean basically, like, that film is gold, and he wouldn't stop asking about it until he knew that the film had been processed, everything was okay, it was scanned. And because, I mean, it was incredible. We did it one take. He's like, that was amazing, we really don't need to do it again, because she was obviously very emotional. And then, you know, there's fun thing. We did this project with Glamour where we gave women a chance to direct. And the first year, you know, we were fortunate, like through a relationship, Gwyneth Paltrow ended up doing one of the shorts, and Trudy Styler, there were a couple of great people. And then it kind of built on from there. A number of people came on and did it. And we just kind of became known as, you know, people who, if you were an actress and you wanted to make you know, to try directing, come and do this, right? So we worked with Kate Hudson, who I had actually known before through a couple different ways. And so we got along very well. And Kate is a fantastic director. I mean, one of the best we've ever worked with, and doesn't direct really enough. Like, we keep pushing her to try to do more stuff. And, you know, often she's busy. She's obviously doing lots of other things too. But when we were shooting with her, it was really funny. Like, we were doing great. It was a 3-day shoot. Everything was fantastic. But she was dating Dax Shepard at the time, and Dax came by to film like a little cameo in it. And, you know, they were having fun, and we got behind. And of course, the AD, who was pretty junior at the time, got very nervous. Like, oh my God, we're so behind. And came up to me to say, like, what can we do to try to solve this problem? And And she's like, can we not break for lunch? Can the crew just like not eat lunch? And I was like, well, no, we can't do that. That's not an option. Yeah. But we were like, look, just go half an hour late. We kind of quickly made a plan, like go half an hour late, we'll go into lunch and we'll figure it out. We'll solve the problem. And Kate saw me talking to her and interpreted it that I was trying to like get on her as the producer, the AD. So Kate comes storming up to me and just rips me out. Like, I'm like, and I couldn't even say, she's like, and it was so, in my mind, I was like, all right, I'm not going to say anything. I'm like, okay, all good. You've got it. Go, and it was so funny. And I knew at the time, I'm like, she's going to be done on time today because she just ripped me out. So she knows she has to be done on time. It almost like solved the problem for me. But it was, it was so funny. Like for the rest of the day, I really liked it. Not stay away, but didn't bug her because I knew she was like miffed at me. And the day finished and she walked up to Francesca and I with tequila shots because it was the last day of the shoot. She brought each of us tequila shots, and we did a shot and Kurt Russell, her dad, was in it. And it was so funny. And I remember him saying too, he was like, it's not really a movie if like the director and the producer don't get into it at some point. But, it's like it's been a really fantastic journey with tons of great stories.
What do you, when you say, oh, Kate Hudson is such a great director, and I know you work with Sean Baker, who I feel as though probably works in a way that's very different from most directors. But what do you really like to see? What's it looking for in a really good director?
I was going to say every director is different. Everybody is different, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think
she just has such a great sense of story.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
See, this is why we're also known as K-Fran. She is able to make sense of all of it. Like she understands the importance of the location, of costumes, of hair and makeup. She has an incredible eye. And she's very decisive. She she knows good acting. She's just
you don't think of it, but she grew up in an acting family, right? Yes. Kurt and Goldie.
Yeah. And she's very disciplined. She's not indulgent. Yeah. She's very disciplined. She's super professional. And she just knows her stuff. She's so fun. And she always had a playlist going, but she's very prepared. And again, I think her sense of storytelling, in fact, 100%. With this,
it's still one of my favorite movies. You all can go look at it.
It's called Cutlass.
Cutlass, really Cutlass. If you Google it, Cutlass Kate Hudson, it's online, not in the greatest format, but you can still see it. And it is really a fantastic
short. And in fact, I
short.
think something that also makes her a good director is that when she got into the editing room, she saw that the way the way she had done the narrative structure, which was in a linear fashion, was not working, and completely, just reworked it, and and again, like, was not afraid to say, this isn't working, I'm going to try something different, and trust herself, and did it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Wow. And I'm gonna, one day I'm gonna do something with these videos. I don't know what, but I'm gonna go back and all that list of adjectives that you use to describe her, and what a wonderful director looks like. I'm gonna find that little piece and keep it. It's great. So
yeah, I will say right now, just a quick aside, we're working with a new director, but not new to the world, Zach Woods, who's an actor. On Veep and Silicon Valley, The Office, and he directed he wrote a feature that's great that we're going to produce. And we were talking about directors. We're like, why don't you direct it? And he thought, oh, I want to go make a short. So
he had not directed before.
He had not directed before. So he decided to make a short film. He recruited Will Ferrell and William Jackson Harper to be in it. We shot it in January. And it's genius.
It's so good.
And it was the only U.S. film to get into the Cannes Film Festival this year.
Yay, Zach.
And he is another super talented film. Like immediately we can tell for all the same reasons that we just talked about with
Yes.
Kate.
Yes.
Same thing. I mean, interesting. I hadn't thought about this, but super talented.
Wow. So Kevin has been, we haven't had a chance to actually talk in the last couple of months, but he keeps telling me about this Gather thing. So
Yes.
what is this new project that you're working on? The Gather project. I think it's called the, no, what's it called?
The Gather Project.
It's called the Gather Project. Okay.
So, you know, along the same lines of what we were talking about with the 24-hour plays, you know, so Francesca and I actually continued to do the 24-hour plays every year. And I was on the board of the education of the group that we benefited up until when we moved to Miami. Because, you know, it kind of was getting to a point we needed a break. And we were moving to a new city. And we said, let's just get to Miami, start a fresh slate. Let's think about what we can do in the community there that would be beneficial. And we kind of played and talked with ideas for 2 years and kind of came up with this title. It was all about community and about building community. And I mean, there's a bunch of reasons for it. I mean, ultimately, we recognize for us how important it is to be amongst friends and to share things and to get together and have discussions about cultural issues, but life in general. And, you know, for us, like looking at the political situation and frustrated at the lack of real communication that's happening between parties. Like, I'm just sick of all the partisanship and the lack of focus on solving real problems. And we said, you know, what unites people? And it was culture, right? I mean, we're at a fractured time. You know, we all have different silos of things that we do and watch, but it was like, how do you build a common thread of culture again? And we said, let's create something that binds people together over their love of things like film and music and food and whatever else it is. There's lots of things. And then build trust, and then ultimately, like within neighborhoods, and then ultimately use that as a platform for trying to solve some of these significant problems that we have in our communities. And so ironically, so we called it the Gather Project, and we decided to launch it in sync with the Miami Film Festival this year. We have hired a wonderful person who's working with us, Jessica Perry, and we created the website and we were ready for this launch, and COVID happened. You know, it's kind of like 9/11 in a way. It's kind of, you know, the world falls apart. And we just literally like in the middle.
But for some reason, I feel like it's a good omen for new ventures.
Yeah. So we, you know, we launched, we launched this thing, but obviously nobody's gathering. I mean, what a funny time for gather. Right. But students were, so one of our friends who was a professor at University of Miami in the film department was frustrated because they're like, what can we do? And we said, we'll do an Instagram. We'll do something just like we're doing for you. It was on Instagram. It wasn't Zoom. It was Instagram, where we literally set up a tripod with our phone in our living room and advertised and said, hey, we're going to get on Instagram and you guys send us whatever questions you want and we'll do it. And a couple of other professors, friends of ours, came on, and we ended up having over 100 people, like students, basically come in and question us. And it was really great. And out of that, we realized like students were really interested in connecting. And so we asked them, would you guys, what if we did an ambassador program? Would you guys be into this? And a couple were like 100%. And so we said, well, we're starting the Gather Film Society of Miami, right? So we're focusing on film in Miami, and we start the Gather Film Society of Miami. And these Miami students were starting it. Well, all of a sudden we get, through word of mouth, we get students from NYU, from University of Southern California, from Amherst, from Dartmouth, from just recently in Savannah at SCAD, interested in this. So we started Gather Film Society of New York, Gather Film Society of LA, Gather Film Society of Pioneer Valley, Massachusetts, which is where Amherst and some other colleges are. We just started Gather Film Society of Savannah. And so we have a Zoom with them every week, and we talk about things that they want to do. And they said, look, we said, what do you want to do? They said, well, we're really interested in learning more about how to get into the entertainment industry. And we said, well, what if we start a show where you interview the people, you students have to interview the people, and we will,
You tell us who.
you tell us who you want to interview.
We'll go out and get them.
We'll get them. And then you've got to put together the questions, and we'll coach you, and we'll kind of co-moderate it with you, but you know, they're going to do it. So they're super excited. And we launched the show Friday, September 18th, 5 p.m. Eastern, with Prentice Penny, who is a fantastic,
where can people see it?
Relatively young writer who's running HBO's Insecure. We're going to Zoom. People should, if people go to gatherproject.net and sign up for on our list, we have just a regular member list. If you sign up, then you'll get all of our email traffic, and if, you know, we'll get you an email to register for the Zoom, and we're going to do it every other Friday. We said for right now, let's just do it every other Friday for the students, and we'll see what goes.
The first date was next week.
September 18th. So 2 weeks from tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
And then well, we can tell you some of the other people that are already signed up to do the show, but we would love, depending on how things go, to do a summit at the end of this school year here in Miami, and and the University of Miami has already agreed they'd love to host it, where we have all the ambassadors come, and we have speakers and workshops, and it's like a 2-day summment. With
a focus on students.
With a focus on students, because one of the things we found also is that, you know, the students at NYU want to talk to the students at USC, and want to talk to the students at UCLA. And what are you working on? I'm a cinematographer. I'm an actor. I'm a blah, blah, blah. Let's network. That's been really exciting to see.
And it's naturally growing, because there are a couple of the students who just graduated and are now young professionals entering the industry. And, you know, look, the idea is we want this to grow. It wasn't created just for students.
Right.
It really, right now, it's about anybody who's interested in film. So frankly, anybody who's on here, you know, sign up, tell us where you live. You know, it's about connecting to other people in your communities. And we're going to do lots of things. It's funny, because as this has come out, like, you know, we just got an email from a friend of ours at a big management production company that they just launched a new doc series on Netflix. And we're like, we could like promote that. You know, there's lots of things that we could do and get them to do Q&A. There's just no end to the possibilities. So right now we're gathering.
We're just gathering.
We're gathering people together who are interested. You know, go and sign up, and as this thing. And if you have ideas, even tell us. Right. You know, really, we want to be a platform.
You know, what I think is interesting, and I want to open it up to questions for a few minutes, but what I think is interesting is that COVID has pushed us, I know it's pushed me, to something that's more online and finding ways to gather that are not necessarily in person, because maybe what we're doing right now, I'm sure we will again, and maybe when we do again, there's still going to be a component of all these things we've learned. When I see the kind of expansion of how well people are doing using Zoom, or I just learned about a platform. Yesterday I learned about 2 platforms that have been created, one to show films, one to be connected. So there's all this creativity coming around this kind of thing. And so, and to me, as somebody who's been a world citizen, I was born that, you know, but I just love it. I just think it's great that we can get out of these silos that were perhaps created by geography or class or whatever the silos are, you know. So.
Yeah. Well, look, it's funny because our Sunday yoga, our Sunday mornings, there's a class that a studio that we go to, and of course during COVID it's been closed mostly, but they've just opened for some outdoor stuff. But at the same time they're doing outdoor, they have a computer set up to be doing it virtually, and you've got like 50 people gathered together. most of whom are on the computer. There's a handful of us who are there in person. It's, you know, definitely a model. I mean, we still look, there's nothing like meeting in person.
Right.
And look forward to the day that we can actually gather in person with people. You know, we really do look forward to that. But in the meantime, it's been an interesting time. So again,
let's see if anybody has any questions. I always ask people to raise their hands either physically or digitally so that I can see you rather than writing in the chat. But who would like to ask a question? No one.
Don't be shy.
Did somebody just speak, or was that Kevin?
That was me.
Who was me? I'm sorry.
No, that was me.
Oh, that was Kevin. Oh, that was Kevin. Okay. So
Kevin will ask and answer his own questions all day long.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. That's what
producers go down that road.
So does nobody have any questions? Okay, so I have a question then, because what I would like to ask you is, right now where you're at in your career, what is the ideal project that would walk in the door that would make you say, oh, we're in, we've got to do this film, we've got to make this film?
I mean, look, it starts with a script, really. I mean, it's funny because right after we made Florida Project, we were kind of burned out and not, you know, not really immediately looking for anything, and it was funny, like I read, there were 2 scripts, one of which we've already produced.
That's so nice. I'm sorry.
One of which we've already produced and the other one we're still working on, but you know, both of them were great scripts. And then which was like, okay, so then we'll, you know, talk to the person. Well, actually it's funny because so I guess I could tell the story of Lorelei. Like, so we made this great film, Lorelei. It's the one that we made in Portland. Sabrina Doyle, she emailed me with the financier. It came to us with money, and they just needed a producer to help them do this. It was a guy who wasn't in the industry but wanted to put money into a movie, and he worked with this young writer director to do it, first time filmmaker, and they sent us an email out of the blue, which never really works, but connected. But they had known us through some mutual friend. So they said, so we looked at the lookbook, and I remember looking at the lookbook going, okay, the lookbook's actually pretty good. Okay, you know, emailed them back, hey, we really don't, you know, it's great. And we always try to reach, no matter who emails, always try to reach back out to people. You know, it's you know, we have been fortunate in our careers and we do get a lot of people reaching out, and frankly, mostly it's just too many, but always try to, you know, to connect with people. But so we read it and like, okay, why don't you send us the short film that you made when you were in film school? Send us a short film. Gosh, okay, it's pretty good. All right, send us the script. Sent the script. Oh God, it's really good. Okay, well, let's meet for lunch. Met for lunch, really liked them. Very, Sabrina is a Brit who went to Cambridge, worked for BBC, got a Fulbright scholarship. I mean, just very bright, really great person. And ultimately it's like one of those things that kind of pulled us in, right? I mean,
Nice. I think, you know, Angela, my fabulous intern, is going to ask a question that came in from Facebook Live.
Yeah,
Sure.
on Facebook Live, Candace Penland asks, what are some tips in getting started in producing films? I'm a new producer and would love any insight, especially during Corona.
Wait, say, you know, will you say it, read it one more time?
Some tips on getting started in producing films and during Corona. I mean,
well, put Corona aside.
Yeah.
Because Corona is a particularly difficult thing, which you're talking about in a second.
For any producer.
But in terms of just start. Like, you know, I mean, we both, it's funny because Francesca and I, we'd say like we kind of came up in unique ways than a lot of people. I mean, people will go and work as an assistant for a producer, or they'll work in, you know, at a talent agency in the lit department, or they'll work as an executive at a studio. And we didn't do that. I mean, we both just jumped in and started producing small
No,
movies.
I worked on,
You had worked on.
I worked on a lot of student films. And so I'd say, like, if you're just starting out and you're producing, do you have, you know, a network from either, did you, you know, from a school or people in your community? And then one of the things that I did early on as a producer was ask for things in kind, ask for things for free. Like, just say, you know what, I really want to shoot in your gas station. I'll come in, I can shoot during these hours. I don't have any money, but I can give you, you know, a special thanks credit, and I can, I don't know, you know, bake you a thank you cake and deliver whatever. I mean, whatever it was, like, come up with creative ways where you can give something of service in exchange for, you know, whatever it is that they're donating. And don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid, you know, to kind of beg, borrow, and steal.
Networking is important, right?
I think what you're speaking to, though, is I think of a producer as the one who brings the resources, right?
That's a big part of it.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
That's a part of it.
That's a part of it. And also, again, like, if you know, in some cases, a script will come to us that has a director, and then we put all the other pieces together, including, you know, the financing. Sometimes the script and financing come together. I mean, it depends, like, what pieces you have are coming to you. So, you know, if it's a writer director friend of yours and you want to produce their movie, then that's when I would say, you know, again, who in your inner circle and outer circle and acquaintance circle can you go to and say, you know, can we use your baseball uniforms or whatever it is, like, to people want to help people who are moving and in action. And so I feel like, don't ever forget that. I mean, so many people helped me, and I feel like, and they said, you know, when you see a moving train, when you see people who are excited and passionate and, you know, working so hard for something they believe in. So
I just think mentoring is important. Like, you know, I really got into it because I went to a guy who'd already been producing successfully, and I went and took him to dinner, picked his brain. I said, I'll do it, you know, whenever you're doing your next movie, I'll help you. And he said, well, I'm shooting one next month and I could use some help raising money. I said, let me read the script. So we walked across the street to his office. This is Gil Holland, Joanne.
Yes.
You know Gil? So
yes.
I grabbed the script. I sat on a park bench for an hour and a half. I read the script. I went and met him at the bar he was at afterward. And I said, I'll help you, but you have to give me a job on set. I don't really know that much about making movies. You don't have to pay me, but I have to be working on set. So I worked as a grip electric, supporting the grip, like basically a grip and electric intern. And I helped him raise part of the budget. And I was on set for the whole shoot and learned a ton. And then after that, you know, we were producing partners, and I did business stuff and watched the way he worked and learned. And I guess that was my entree in it. Officially, I was a producer, but I was really kind of junior producer to him, learning. And in terms of COVID, it's really tough, you know, because if you're going to have a group of people together, you have to really be responsible. You know, we're shooting something now, like I mentioned with Zach Woods, but it's a group of professionals that, you know, have worked together before, and we're following very specific guidelines. Everybody's getting tested. There's very specific rules that we have to follow as we work together. It's a very unusual time. I think if, you know, the last thing I would say about it is just go make stuff, right? Make short films. As a director, writer, producer, whatever, just get out and grab your camera, grab your phone.
And don't underestimate the power of those short films, that short format, to catapult you to the next place, the next level, get you seen. I mean,
Sean Baker made tons of stuff, short films, small features before he ever, I mean, The Florida Project was his 6th movie.
Right.
You know, I mean,
I just want to be conscious of the time because it's exactly.
Yeah, of course.
But Anna had one question, if you were willing to go on a couple of minutes. This is
Sure.
a really good couples question. So if you don't mind, go ahead, Anna. She
So
was
Gwyneth's
embarrassed.
making me come on video even though I'm still in my gym clothes and eating breakfast. So first of all, I'd like to just thank you for sharing your story, because I think it's super easy to romanticize this idea of like a power creative couple, and like that you guys are just like, you know, and so I love hearing the behind the scenes. So my question, I'll just read it. It's more for Francesca, which is, how do you navigate having your own voice heard in meetings where I imagine people probably default to Kevin, both because he's a man in a male-dominated field, and I'll pick on you a little bit because he also speaks typically first and most to the questions. At least that's how it's been to me.
This is an excellent question. I love you.
Did he pay you for this?
This is an amazing question. Well, just to go back to when we first met and how I was so taken early on with Kevin's listening skills. Well, things have changed. Like I actually become like the listener and the, you know, but it's interesting. We did a project for Lifetime called 5, and we partnered with Jen Aniston and Kirsten Hahn, who have gone on to do the morning show and are dear friends of ours, but you know, also colleagues. And when we were working with Lifetime, it was so interesting because basically Kevin was the only man in the room. And there is a different dynamic, you know, and so I have to, you know, kind of remind myself also, okay, is there something that I want to say? Do I feel like, you know, he is leading this, and is there, as partners, it's hard because I have so much respect for him and I do want to hear what he has to say. But it's an interesting balance. Like I have to check myself and say, like, do I feel like I am being small here, or feel quieted, or, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes I'll have a conversation with him afterwards and talk about that and say, I feel like, you know, I didn't get my point across, or, you know, I felt that you were being too dumb, whatever it is. But it's you know, it's something that I'm very conscious of, that I struggle with, that I, you know, it's a bit of a seesaw. So,
and look, as a couple, we constantly communicate. I mean, and we're a normal couple. I mean, we fight like hell often, but communicate all the time. You know, I mean, that's the important thing. And I think, you know, I think we also look at ways, you know, where we separate. Like Francesca, you know, went to Portland without me to run that show. And we talked recently about like her going to LA to do this new short film, although it's unfortunately just doesn't make sense for either of us to go, really. But so, you know, I think we divide and conquer. And so that doesn't always mean that we're together doing stuff. We certainly, I would say I love it when we're together.
But like I have to say, I loved it so much when I was by myself in Portland with a female director, and it was her first feature, and it was so many women on set, and there was like it's a different dynamic, and I loved it, you know, and I love that.
I'd say we're very conscious of that too.
Yeah.
I mean, we make conscious choices depending upon who we're working with, like who will take the lead, you know, often.
Yes.
You know, we do, it almost self-selects,
Yeah.
you know, it self-selects. And I certainly, you know, I was fortunate to grow up with a wonderful, strong mother as well. So I appreciate
the greatest woman.
So I appreciate,
she's the greatest.
You know, I appreciate strength in women. And so those, you know, situations I find to be great.
Don has one more question, and if you were willing to, one more question, and then we'll go ahead, Don.
This has been wonderful. I have screenplays. How do I contact you?
So, you know, I will tell you, if you go to, Kevin at freestyle-la.com.
Say again.
I'm sorry.
Say it again, please. It broke up.
Kevin at freestyle-la.com. But just, and I have no issue with people like emailing me and reaching out with comments. I will tell you, even when there are people who send me scripts that I'm working with, I'm very slow, and I typically do not have time to read unsolicited material because we're just, you know, we're lucky. I mean, we're in a place where we're choosing what we're doing. And look, I don't mean that to be discouraging to you. It's just, you know, send me stuff, but I'm just being very upfront with you. You know, it's just it's kind of where we've had to come to in our lives. You know, we as somebody that works in the industry said to us too, time is your currency, right? So it's
if you were busy, I wouldn't send it to you.
no, since yeah, you know, yeah, that's right. That's funny. Yeah, of course. No, it's true. I get it. And so, you know, I'm happy to have you connect with me over email and we can chat, and I'm happy to try to be, you know, supportive. But you know, look, I'll tell you, I mean, I recently, and I won't even name names, but, you know, met an actor who's, you know, a big actor who's very interested in writing, directing, and sent stuff. And it's like, I'm just not a very fast reader. Like, I'm still behind in even saying this.
Good.
Like,
That's all good. And if there's ever a time where you might have time, it's during COVID. So I'll contact you.
And,
yeah.
and I'll just jump in and say, and the reason Kevin was really answering that question is because if I read something, I'm like, let's do it. So I like now, now it literally, it's like a filter of, okay.
Well, we both, look, in the past,
fine.
you know, when you're early on in your career, it's a different situation, you know? I mean, it's, you know, because of the success that we've had, we have, you know, agents, we have a lot of projects from filmmakers who've had like their first film at Sundance or, you know, at Toronto or something, and they're trying to get their second one up and they need shepherding. And even that, I mean, it takes a lot of work, you know, even for people who've had success at that level. I mean, there's a couple things like that we're working on, and you know, we have learned we have to be good. And so, look, to be honest, I'm just being completely candid for everybody on there. And also would say to you too, you know, to anybody who's pushing, you know, look, submit stuff to screenwriting competitions, because things that have gone through that filter and had success, that means something, you know.
Right.
Make a short film, like go out and if you're not a director, find a, you know, make stuff, go take a short. Like one of the filmmakers that we're working with now reached out to us because she made a short film that was at Toronto, and we happened going to be in Toronto. I said, oh, well, you know, we'll have coffee, send us a short. It was fantastic. Film went to Sundance, was successful. And now we're working to produce her feature.
And
know.
I want to say something about the competitions. The first film that I sold to Miramax back in the day was called A View from the Top. And the script was amazing. It was kind of a To Die For. I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie To Die For. But like set in the world of airline stewardesses. And the movie became very different from the script, but the script is something that I found at a competition, and ended up, you know, and then the writer partnered with the writer, and we went, you know, we took it out to places. So I do think that those places are really a great resource also.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to let you guys go because we're already, you know, well over time. I'm really grateful for your time. And I just want to thank you so much. And we put the Gather project in the chat. So
please come check it out. Please come
check.
check.
We've got to go find out what you're doing.
Yeah. and tell any students in your life.
Yeah,
and
students for sure. Because I think a lot of
they're really having fun.
You know, anybody that's really trying to break in the industry, I think, you know.
And we have some amazing people like the co-head
of Amazon, co-head of Participant.
All doing talks. So it's going to to be a good lineup.
So,
fantastic.
Joanne, wonderful to see you.
Joanne, always the best for you.
Yes. I'll get to see you in Miami eventually, whenever that happens.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Yeah. But thank you so much.
Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Francesca.
Take care.